Hey guys, it's Dorian Nicole and I am back with another video. Today's video will be a real estate video. I feel like I've only been doing real estate videos, but it's just because that's all I've been doing lately is real estate. Trying to grow my business, trying to learn the business, and in doing that, I've learned a lot that I think should be shared. So I'm here today with another real estate video, and we will be talking about how to get approved for an apartment. So more specifically, I will be giving you all some tips on how to increase your approval odds, and also I will be letting you know what specific things landlords look at, are looking for, and pay attention to when you apply for an apartment. So if that interests you, you feel like this information is beneficial to you, then keep watching. Before I get started, I just want to make this disclaimer. I don't want anybody thinking that this is some kind of get rich quick thing. I'm not giving out a cheat code on how to get approved for an apartment regardless of your situation. This ain't that. This is a video that's going to prepare you for the process. I'm going to tell you what specific things landlords are looking at, what they are looking for, and what things could possibly be hindering you from getting approved. So how to make you look better against competition, how to make you stand out to the landlord, and what they put the most weight on when you apply for an apartment. Okay, I had to put that out there because I know everybody is like, we are in a time where everything is quick. You get rich quick, you get this apartment quick, you get this job quick. Everything is quick here. Everything is, there's nobody wants to sit through a process. Nobody wants to take the time to learn, take the time to grow, take the time to understand what it is they're doing. So I had to put that out there, okay? Because I know that the rental process in itself is getting very crazy. It's getting very out of hand. I said in my last video that I understand both sides. I understand the landlord side because unfortunately there are tenants who ruin it for everybody. People who can't keep their apartment clean, people who can't pay their rent, people who don't pay the utilities for the property that they are living in, people who just tear up and mess up, and then the landlord has to come in and spend all this money to fix up the property that they weren't even living in. Okay, so I do understand the landlord side of it. However, I also understand the tenant side of it because there are tenants who aren't bad tenants. There are tenants who pay their rent on time, who pay their bills on time, who don't cause any ruckus, who don't cause any mess. They just, you know, they live in the property, they do good, and that's it. But unfortunately, the few that are bad tenants are making it hard for the many that are good tenants. And so I think that's why the rental process or renting in itself has become so ridiculously crazy. All of the qualifications, the extra steps, the back and forth. It's a lot that goes into the rental process, and it wasn't always this way. Qualifications for apartments are extremely outrageous. Some of them, not all of them, are extremely outrageous, and I feel for the tenants who are like just trying to do right and just trying to get them a spot, and it's hard because the landlords are being really unrealistic, really intense and strict. But like I said, I can't fault all of the landlords. Like, I've met landlords who have told me they had somebody in their property, it was a hard time getting them out of the property, they weren't paying rent, they had animals that they weren't supposed to have that were just like going to the bathroom all over the place. So as a tenant, you kind of have to look at it from the landlord's perspective. Like, this is their property that they've bought, that they're responsible for, that they're paying for, that they are allowing you to live in. So it's all about making yourself stand out as a tenant, as a person that's about to be living in somebody's property. You really have to put your best foot forward and make sure all of your stuff is straight. Make sure there are no questions, there are no issues when a landlord is looking at your application. The first thing that landlords really put a lot of weight on for rental applications is income, because of course the income is going to be how you pay the rent. So they want to make sure that you have enough income to cover the rent. And when I say that, I don't mean just enough to cover the rent. If you notice, landlords are now asking for tenants to make at least 3 times the monthly rent. And for some spaces that is a little outrageous, I'm not gonna lie. But for a lot of places it's understandable. Like, you have to realize that landlords look at it like they want to make sure that regardless of what else you have going on in life, you can still pay your rent. So if an unexpected expense comes up, if an unexpected bill comes up, something happens to your kids, something happens to your car, and then you got to put out extra money, landlords want to make sure that regardless of all of that, you still have enough money to pay your rent. And so that's why they require you to make well over what the rent is. But I do think that some landlords are a little outrageous. Like, sometimes 3 times the rent is extreme, but landlords are willing to work with you depending on how much you make. So if the rent is $1,500, they're asking for 3 times the monthly rent, that's $4,500. If you don't make $4,500 but you make $4,000, the landlord may be willing to work with you, because that is still enough to cover the rent and then cover expenses on the side. So you want to have a good income. And when we say good income, you want income that is verifiable. So you want the landlords to be able to verify this income. So they usually ask for pay stubs. I have seen where they're asking for like W-2s and tax returns now. And I know it wasn't always that way, but it's gotten that way just because they know people are out here making fake pay stubs. People are out here lying. So your pay stubs can be fake, but your W-2s and your tax returns, you can't fake those. I mean, you probably can. Y'all real crafty out here, but a normal person is not gonna go through the trouble of faking a W-2, faking a tax return, you know, all of that stuff. So sometimes your pay stubs will suffice, but sometimes they will ask for additional information like a W-2 or a tax return, just to make sure that the income you've provided and the pay stubs that you've provided are legit. So verifiable income is important. Consistent income is important. So people who maybe are self-employed, you know, we don't always get paid regularly. We could go a month without getting a check. And so landlords want to be sure that they won't miss any money, that you're not going to miss paying your rent because you haven't gotten paid yet. So you want to be sure that you're getting consistent income. So whether that's you're getting income every 2 weeks, you get paid bi-weekly, you get paid weekly, they just want to make sure that you have consistent income coming in. And so for somebody that doesn't have consistent income, you may have to jump through a little more hoops to prove to them that you can pay this rent, to prove to them that even though you don't have maybe a consistent income, you have enough income to cover your monthly rent. Like I said, you want to make sure that you have enough income to cover not only your rent, but everyday expenses, utilities, and emergencies, like just in case something unexpected comes up. The second most important thing that landlords look for when reviewing applications is your credit score. So landlords do specify the credit score is usually 620 or higher. Some landlords, I have seen them do 600 or higher. It really just depends on the landlord, and it depends on the property. It depends on where you're moving. But if you are off of the credit score, like let's say the credit score requirement is 600 and your credit score is 595, a landlord may be willing to work with you depending on what's on your credit. So some of the things that they absolutely will not accept is evictions, of course, because that means that wherever you were previously, you weren't paying the rent. So there's no guarantee that you're going to pay the rent here. So they don't want to see any evictions. They don't want to see any collections, because that also means that you can't pay your bills. And they don't want to see any delinquencies. So delinquencies are late payments, and for it to be on your credit, it usually has to be more than 30 days late. So it's not like, you know, a little late payments. These are like 30, 60, 90 days late. Those are the things that come up as red flags for landlords, and it will certainly cause them not to approve you for an apartment. So My advice is to really be honest with yourself. You should always be checking your own credit. A lot of people use like Credit Karma or whatever. I would not recommend Credit Karma. There was a time when I used Credit Karma, but then I learned that Credit Karma is not legit. They don't give you all of the information that you need, and most of the times when people like Landlords pull credit reports, they're not getting your Credit Karma score. They're getting your score from TransUnion and Equifax and whoever the third person is. So Credit Karma doesn't really give you a accurate, like very, very accurate of your credit score. You should be checking your credit on your own to see what's on there, to see what's affecting your score, and to figure out how you can improve on those things. I think you can check your credit once a year for free. I think it's freecreditreport.com or something like that. I'll find out and link it. But you can check your credit for free and it'll give you the full report. It's a lot of pages. If you have a lot of stuff on your credit, it's a lot of pages. But it will give you the full breakdown of everything that's on your credit. It'll show you your late payments. It'll show you how many late payments, how long the payments have been late. It'll show you what's in collections, and it'll give you the information for the collection. So the phone number for where you can call to get things straightened out. And there are also a lot of credit repair companies out here. I know all of them aren't legit. Some of them want you to pay like these extreme amounts of money for them to maybe fix your credit. But there are some legit credit repair companies out here. So I would say if your credit is really bad, if you know your credit is really bad, then I wouldn't even suggest applying, because essentially you're wasting your money. Like, there are fees for applications, and application fees are not cheap. I think the cheapest I've seen an application fee is $30, but I've also seen application fees as high as $100. And unfortunately, there's no way to kind of like make a set price on an application fee, only because it really depends on how the landlord is processing the application. Like, landlords can use third-party vendors. They can use stuff like Rent Spree or Zillow or whatever. They can use a number of different ways to run an application, to submit an application. And so the fee is really set by the landlord or set by the third party that they are using. So it's really no way of getting out of that. And usually application fees are non-refundable. So essentially you're putting out this money and you're not going to get it back if you don't get approved. So if you already know that you have stuff going on with your credit, I wouldn't recommend applying and seeing what happens unless you got money to waste. If you have money to waste, then keep applying to these apartments and cross your fingers and pray that a landlord takes you and is willing to take a chance on you. But if you're like me and you can't be wasting no coins out here, then you probably should just take some time to work on your credit before you apply for an apartment. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. They want to be in their apartment tomorrow, but the reality is that, like I said, you're essentially wasting your time, wasting your money, when we already know that because of your credit score and because of what's on your credit score, you won't get approved. So I would really, if you know your credit score is really out of whack and you have a lot of stuff going on, then I would really say think about taking the time to fix your credit. And most people think it's a long process, but it's really not a long process. Unless you have like outrageous things on your credit, it's doable. It's really doable. And I say that speaking from experience, because before I moved into my house, my credit score was in the 500s. I don't remember exactly. It might have been like 540 something. My credit was trash. Maybe I'll do like a story time or something on like how I got it together. But my credit was trash, and it took me a year and a half to get it together, to really get things on track to where my credit was good enough for me to get my house. So I say, depending on what's on your credit, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, but a year or two to really sit and get your credit together versus a year or two of either paying this rent that you can't afford really, or a year or two of searching for an apartment that's going to approve you with your jacked up credit. Like, if you weigh your options, it's much less stressful to just kind of stay put and figure it out. Figure out your credit situation, figure out what you need to do to get back on track. You really have to be honest with yourself and say, am I in a position to rent? And if the answer is no because of your credit score, then you just have to accept that. And instead of, you know, continuing the process, just take some time to really get your credit together so that it won't be a worry for you when you go to apply. So the third thing that landlords check for is your current or previous rental history. So where you're living now, or where you're moving from, or where you were living previously, landlords do look at that. Some landlords now are actually calling these people to, you know, see what type of tenant you were, to make sure you paid your rent on time, to make sure there were no issues. So you really want to make sure that you have a good relationship with your current or previous landlord. Or even if it's not a good relationship, you just want to make sure, or as long as you are or were a good tenant, you're okay. But if you know you had some issues with your previous landlord, I feel like you should be honest with the landlord up front, because the worst thing you can do is not say anything, and then the landlord for the place that you're trying to get calls your previous landlord and they done threw dirt all on your name. And so now the landlord for the property that you're trying to get is like, oh no, I don't want to deal with that person. They seem like a hard time. That's the issue that tenants are running into now. It's almost like a job. Like, you never want to leave a job with bad blood, because you never know when you may need a reference from that job. You never know when somebody's going to call to see, you know, how you were, look for a recommendation. It's the same thing with renting a property. That landlord who you rented from previously, or you're currently renting from, they have the ability to make or break your next rental situation. And so you don't want to have bad blood with who you're currently renting from, or who you've rented from in the past, because it is going to be a bad look for you to the tenant for the property that to the landlord for the property that you're trying to get. So it's very important. I think people don't really think that these landlords is calling jobs and calling previous landlords, but they are. Like, landlords are really going above and beyond, because like I said, things have gotten crazy as far as tenants is concerned. And so they want to make sure that they're covering all of their bases. And so if that means reaching out to previous landlords to see what type of tenant you were, that is what they're going to do. So you want to really make sure that you don't have any kind of beef with your landlord. Sometimes you just got to take a step back and look at the situation and really say to yourself, what needs to be done for me to get where I'm trying to get? And having a bad relationship with your current or previous landlord is not the move. Because like I said, if the landlord for the property that you're trying to rent now reaches out to them and they throw dirt on your name and they say all types of bad stuff about you, the landlord is moving on to the next person, and now you're out. And that's just it. So making sure that you have a good relationship, and also making sure to keep copies and receipts of all of your payments. Okay, that is very important. People don't think about this, but I don't care if you've been living in the property for 5 years. Keep copies of every payment, every receipt, every email, text message, any type of communication with the landlord that you have. Keep copies, keep records, keep receipts, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. You never know where you're going to end up. And when you go apply for a new property, the best thing you could do is give them copies and receipts of your payments, because that's 100% proof that you pay your rent on time, regardless of anything else that's going on, regardless of anything the landlord may have said about you, anything that this current landlord may be thinking. If you have receipts to show that you made your payments of your rent every month, then that is a big plus. Okay, to have that information, it really makes you stand out, and it really makes landlords say, okay, not only do they pay their rent on time, but they keep good records, they keep good receipts, they're organized. Like, having those receipts and being able to show that really makes you look good to the landlord for where you're currently trying to rent. So I would say that's definitely one tip from wherever you are now. If it's too late and you haven't saved them, then this is just, you know, for future reference. You can come back to this. But if you are in a spot now and you just moved in there, or you've been in there or whatever, start now and start saving these receipts and saving these copies, because you never know how things will go when it's time for you to roll. You know what I mean? Like, even if you make the decision, oh, I just don't want to live here no more, I'm ready to go, your landlord might have an attitude because they wasn't trying to go through the process of finding a new tenant for this property. And so now they mad at you just off the strength that you're moving. And so they may give the new landlord a bad review about you, but just because they're in their feelings because you're moving. But regardless of what the landlord say about you, if you can show that you paid your rent on time for however many years or however long you've been there, that's a good look for the new landlord, because that's all they're concerned about, is that you're paying your rent on time and you're not messing up their property. So it's very important, very, very important where you're living now before you move, and your previous rental history is always super, super important for when you're moving into a new property. And the final thing that comes up for tenants that I don't think they take into consideration is a criminal background. So I will say that not all applications do a criminal background. It just really depends on the process that they use. But there are applications where they do a criminal background check. And so if they do a criminal background check and something comes back for you, a landlord more than likely won't accept you. They don't necessarily have to take you as a tenant if you have a criminal background. And so sometimes they will take the time frame into consideration. Like if it's been 10 years or something like that, then they may say, okay, this person might have changed, but then they may want to know, like, what have you been doing since you got charged or since you got out of jail? Have you gotten a job? Have you turned your life around? Or are you still out here not doing right? And, you know, that may be a problem for me because I don't want nobody running up in my house. I don't want nobody breaking down my doors trying to get to you, blowing up my spot trying to get to you. Like, if you're a criminal, that comes with extra drama, and that's how landlords look at it. So if you do have a criminal background, you really have to do your due diligence and kind of explain yourself. I would say, like I always say, talk to the landlord. Like, just be honest and upfront. I don't know why people now feel like they gotta lie about everything. What's that about? Like, why we can't just be honest? If you have an honest conversation with somebody to let them know what's going on up front, it looks much better than a landlord going through the process and getting this report back. And now for them to have to make assumptions and for them to have to try to figure out what's going on here. If you know you have a criminal background, just let the landlord know up front. Or if you're working with an agent, at least let the agent know up front. Because here's the thing. At least if you tell the agent has the ability to reach out to the landlord themselves or reach out to the listing agent themselves to let them know this is what's going on. And then sometimes you do get agents that are nice that will respond and say, you know, my landlord is not willing to accept anybody with a criminal background under any circumstances. And then you know, okay, so let me not even waste my time. Let me not even waste my little application fee money. Let me just move on to the next property. It saves you time. It saves you energy. It saves you money. It saves you heartache, because if this is the property that you really, really loved, and now you got this criminal background and it comes back and you can't get approved for the apartment because of that, you're going to be upset. And so that's why it's important to just be upfront and be honest. Let them know what's going on before you put in an application. Because once you put in an application, like I said, that fee is non-refundable, and it's usually per person. So if it's $45 per person to apply to a property and you with your significant other, that's $90 for an application fee that you're not getting back if you don't get approved. You know what I mean? $90 is the bill. I don't want to be out here just throwing away $90 when I could have avoided that by paying attention to what was going to be on my application, or paying attention to my credit score, or paying attention and letting the landlord know what came back on my criminal background or what I have on my criminal background. You really have to, I keep saying, be honest with yourself. A lot of people think that landlords are just supposed to look past any and everything. And at the end of the day, this landlord don't know you. These landlords don't know you. They don't know what type of person you are, and you don't really have the time to like try to prove yourself. So it will be a situation where you may get a lot of no's, but if you set yourself up the right way, if you make sure that you have all of your stuff in order, you won't have to jump through all of the hoops. You won't have to go through all of the back and forth. You won't have to waste your money on application fees or waste your money going to see apartments. I've met so many tenants who are like, I'm just so tired of looking at apartments. I'm so tired of applying and not getting approved. And I just feel like if that's what's happening to you, if you keep applying to properties and you're not getting approved, hopefully the people are telling you why you're not getting approved. And if they're not, then maybe you should try to find an agent, because at least an agent can say, oh, well, this is what happened. Sometimes they don't want to reach out to the tenants because they already feel bad because they didn't pick you. And so to have to explain that to you, some landlords don't want to do it. So if you're working with the agent, then the agent can say, okay, well, this is why you weren't approved. But you, like I said, you may have to take some time to get it together. If you keep getting denied and keep getting denied and keep getting denied, that should be a sign that, like, it's not them, it's you. And so you have to take the time to really see what's going on, to really pay attention to what's going on, fix your credit, increase your income, do whatever you have to do to be the best tenant for this property. Because the other thing is that there's competition. You're not the only person applying for this property. You may be up against somebody who got a 720 credit score. They make $75,000 a year. They don't have no criminal background. And if that's the case, then you out the loop. You got one little thing on your application, one little thing on your credit, and the landlord is going to go with the other person just because their credentials are better, just because they meet the qualifications better. So you can't always look at it as, oh, it's the landlord. No, sometimes the competition was just better, and that's just the truth. But that shouldn't discourage you. At the end of the day, whatever happens, you should use it to say, okay, what do I need to do now? And instead of just continuing to look, continuing to apply, continuing to get shot down, and now you keep getting more and more discouraged, really take the time to figure out what the problem is, and then really take the time to figure out how to fix the problem. And that is the best way that you can ensure that you get approved for that next property that you apply to. So all of these things are super important. Like I said, some are more important than others. Some depend on the landlord, because not all landlords check for the same things. But this is the basis: income, credit, rental history, and criminal background. That is the basis for applying for an apartment. So those are the things that you should focus on specifically. Make sure that all your ducks are in a row. Make sure that everything is up to par, up to date. There are no issues. And if there are issues, you have two options. You can either talk to the landlord and pray that they have some sympathy for you and they're willing to give you a chance, or you can take a step back and take some time to fix whatever you need to fix and then try to apply for an apartment. This is very much a self thing. Very much you have to be honest with yourself and figure out what's best for you and figure out what moves you have to make to become the best candidate for whatever property you're trying to apply to. So those are some of my tips for increasing your approval odds for any property that you're applying to. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, of course, go ahead and give me a thumbs up and drop a comment below to let me know if you are a current renter or if you have rented previously. How did the application process go for you? How did the apartment hunting go for you? And how are you feeling now about the property that you are in? Okay, leave me a comment below, let me know, and of course I will see you all on the next video.